going to be playing with the So Kind of You Glimmer of the Month for March 2023 from Spellbinders. This is a really pretty set. We've got this glimmer plate that is all these lovely flowers, and then we've got this bit, which is also flowers and leaves a space for you to be able to put your sentiment in. And then we've got this So Kind of You sentiment with a scalloped border die to go with it. Also, this bit here, this border for your sentiment also has a die, so you can cut that out as well. So what I'm going to do to start off with, I decided we're going to start off with a piece of white cardstock and foil that up using some gold glimmer foil. And we're going to cover the front of a white card panel. So I've got my glimmer system off to the side, heating up, and we've got a gold foil. And I'm going to go ahead and pull out my quick trimmer so that I can cut some pieces of foil that are going to be the right size to go across this panel. Now this looks like this guy here is right at 4 1/4. It's like just under 4 1/4. So that's how wide I need my foil to be, and this is just the right size. Perfect. So now I just need a piece that is going to be about 2 3/4 inches. So you can do this a couple of different ways. You can have it just measured out. Right now I have the AC on, so it is kind of fluttering a little bit, which is one reason why I love this, because it holds my foil down so it doesn't fly away while I'm trying to cut it. So I'm also going to use one of the blades that comes with the quick trimmer. I'm using this Spellbinders foil one. The other one is for paper. And the reason they've got two different ones is so that you don't dull the blade on paper if you're going to be using it on foil, because you need to make sure it stays nice and sharp for your foil, right? There we go. So the first piece is cut. So I am going to have this positioned. I think I'm going to start at the top and work my way down. And I'm just going to use a piece of my best ever craft tape to hold it down at the top, and that's going to be kind of the border. Now I'm going to do like I do with most of my cards, and that is I'm going to trim the edges of this foiled panel once I'm done. So if some of it isn't exactly straight, that is perfectly fine. So putting a little bit of tape over the top and then flipping it over the edge, and that's going to make it so this is going to have a hinge to go back there. Now I can put my foil down. I'm going to go right up to the edge there, and then flip this over. Now what you want to make sure is that you don't have it like this. Over here we've got some of the white peeking out behind the foil plate. We don't want that. We want to make sure it's covered completely with the foil. So I'm going to slide this foil up a little bit more on that side. And this happens to me almost every time I flip that hinge. I think I just move it around a little bit too much. Okay. Off to the side here, I have my hot foil system from Spellbinders. This is the Glimmer system, and you can see it's got the green light on, so it says that it is all ready. So now all I need to do is I'm going to put this down. You always want to have, whenever you're using hot foil, we want to have the foil being shiny side facing away from the paper. This is actually true for any foil. If you are doing toner foil, you want the shiny side to be facing away from the cardstock, because that's the part you want to be seen. You don't want this gray stuff to be seen. Plus, on hot foil, this is the side that has the adhesive. So we're going to go ahead and put this down right about there. And now I'm going to put my plates on top. One is the spacer pad and the other one is the thin shim. And I don't yet know if I need that much pressure or not, but I'm going to go ahead and go with it first time around. This is the first time I've used this specific glimmer set. So hit the timer, and once the timer stops blinking, we can send it through our Platinum 6 to give that pressure that's going to transfer that foil. And you can feel the pressure when it goes over your hot foil plates. You don't have to go all the way down and all the way back. You can feel the pressure when you've gone over that bit. Be careful though, some of these have got additional bits, so you want to make sure you're going over the whole thing and not missing part of it. But let's go ahead and take a look. And it looks like everything is sticking to my plate, which is fine. That happens sometimes. This is also going to be pretty hot, so I'm going to use a magnet to lift it off. It's also one of the bigger plates. So with your Platinum 6, it does come with a magnet. It comes with this guy here, and that's good for most of them, but I found that sometimes the bigger ones, it doesn't quite pick up well enough, and that's what it actually did. This is just something I picked up at the Dollar Tree. It's in the hardware and automotive section for like picking up nails and such. Okay, so now let's let this cool for just a sec. And then we can take a look and see how that looks. And that, I think, turned out lovely. You know what I think would be really pretty? That design has all of my flowers going up. So what if I did another row going all down and then used this piece kind of as a belt across the middle? I think that would be really pretty, but before I can position this where I want it, I need to trim this panel down because I always do. I basically always want to have a little bit of white space around the edges. So first thing, take off that little bit of overfoiling that I had there. Now I'm going to trim this down a little bit. And I'm actually only going to trim it down to 4 1/8. It should bring it up right with the edge of those. It looks like it could be trimmed a little bit more, but I think that's about right. And trim a little bit off of the top as well. Basically bringing the foil pretty much to the edge of the paper. So now I've got a piece of cardstock that is about 4 1/8 wide. So I want this one to be, it's going on a 5 1/4, I'm sorry, a 5 1/2 inch. So that means I need to have, this one's actually about the right size, I think, because it's already a little bit down. So I'm going to just trim off basically a smidge. There we go. And I do have a card base over here, so if I center that on my card base, looks like I could trim off a little bit more. So it's possible that these lines are not completely accurate anymore. There we go. Okay, so I think that's going to be right about where I want it. Now I'm going to add this one right down at the bottom, and then I can add this piece across the middle. Okay. And let's take a look. Yeah, this is sticking to my plate basically because the heat and the adhesive from the Best Ever Craft Tape. Okay. Your hot foil system also comes with this silicone mat, which is great for holding onto your plates so that it doesn't do any kind of damage to your desktop. I'm using a glass mat, so it doesn't really do any damage on my end, which is good. Okay, let it cool just a little bit. And that looks great, and it does leave that white area right in the center. Now for that, we could, I think I'm going to use this. We can use this, or we could basically leave it open and put something else there. You could do some stamping, you could just add a sentiment, whatever you want to do. But I think that's going to look lovely, but I am going to do an additional piece here, and I'm going to have it popped up on foam, because I love foam, right? So for this next part, I'm going to use my Cobalt Blue Glimmer hot foil, and I've already got a couple pieces cut out and everything. One is going to go with a little sentiment, and the other one is for that big banner that I think is going to be so pretty. I'm also taping it down on both sides to make sure it doesn't move. I'm not as concerned on this piece, on the big one, about having it touch the foil itself. What happens sometimes when you're foiling is that if you've got tape touching your hot foil, you may wind up with some overfoiling. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to add it to the edges so it's got the least amount of space that might have some overfoiling, and then it should be fine. For this one, it really doesn't matter as much because I'm die cutting that one out. This one is going to have a circular or an oval shape around the die cut, so it could have some overfoiling there, but like I said, it's going to be so minimal, I'm not really concerned. So now I'm going to take this, I'm going to turn it over so that the flat part of my hot foil plate is touching my Glimmer system. And we're going to wait for that to get all heated up, and then I can send it through my die cutting machine. And you might hear that little sound where it goes over the plates. You heard it twice because we've got the two different hot plates on there. Get the die cutting machine out of the way. And let's take a look and see how these turned out. And I'm just going to take the tape off. So that looks pretty good. There is a little overfoiling, and I'm going to take care of that with an eraser, so that's going to be fine. And one of the things I like about the Best Ever Craft Tape is it really doesn't leave much residue, if any. So far I really haven't found any that gets left onto the cardstock. So it stays nice and sticky, so you can reuse it, which is awesome, but it doesn't leave the residue on your project. Those look great. I think that's going to be great. So just to take care of that little bit of overfoiling, I've got a rubber eraser. If the rubber eraser doesn't work, you can use a sand eraser, and it'll take care of the rest of it. You do want to be a little careful when you're using a sand eraser over the foil that you want to keep, because it can dull the finish a little bit. And I'm probably going to need to use one of those. So let me grab out a sand eraser. Now luckily it's just a couple little places, it's not a bunch, and it's probably not going to be really that noticeable. So I'm just going over the areas I want to get rid of. So that one looks good, and then we've got this one little blob above the stem here, and this part is probably going to be die cut out anyway, so it's not going to be a big deal. But there's always a chance that you're going to wind up with a little overfoiling, so having an eraser is a good idea to get that taken care of. Okay, so next we're going to die cut these out. So I'm going to go ahead and position my die. This is the one that goes with that lovely border or band, I should say. So I'm going to go ahead and tape that in place. And then we've got the oval that can go around our So Kind of You. I'm going to kind of center that, and I'm going to run that through my die cutting machine. So your die cutting machine comes with a platform. So this is a thick plastic platform for you to put all of your things on, and it comes with some clear plates like this one. One trick though, and I'm going to try it out today, that I learned actually this past weekend, I like using a magic mat. Now magic mat, what it does, this is a self-healing mat from scrapbook.com, and it works great in absorbing a lot of the pressure that goes into the plates when you're doing your die cutting, and that's what causes your die cutting plates to warp. Well, what I learned is that they're now trying out a different thing to do, and that is using two of them. So what you've been doing is using one and then a plastic plate. And that's what I've been doing. So this time I'm going to try using a second one and see how that one works on here. Now, when you do this, you are going to have to make sure that your dies are exactly where you want them, because you know what? If you're not using a clear plate, you're not going to be able to see where your dies are. So I need to make sure these are exactly where I want them. These are going to be exactly where I want them. And I'm placing my second magic mat over the top. And if this doesn't work, I can always go back and die cut it a second time using a plate, and that should be fine. But this way you wouldn't be warping either of your glass plates, right? So I would say just experiment and see what works for you, because it may be that sometimes you need to use your plexiglass plates and sometimes you don't. My thought is, if you're wanting to do anything that's going to be intricate, you probably are going to have to make sure you've got extra pressure. So this is just using two of the magic mat, and that came out perfect. So let's make sure this one did too. Okay, this one, it's all, I can tell it's not wanting to come out. So it didn't come out perfect on this one. So everything is still in place. It does have an imprint, but it doesn't look like it cut all the way through on all of it. So for that one, I'm going to go ahead and run it through with a plate. Now, with one reason is probably because I had it straight. Another tip for doing die cutting is you probably want to have it at a little bit of an angle. Okay, let's go ahead and try that using the Magic Mat too then. Got it at an angle. And I'm going to run it through again. And we'll see if it works well. Okay. So it did come out better. And looks like the part that is sticking is the part that is taped. Okay, awesome. So this has basically been my second time. I just did my first time on Saturday. This is my second time using 2 of the Magic Mats instead of using any regular cutting plate, and it worked perfectly. Add a little color to my flowers on my panel and again on that banner. And I'm going to start off with my IB1. Now this one is the lightest, and I'm just going to come down from the top a little bit, starting on my center flower, which is the biggest one. And then my darkest is my IB2. I'm sorry, IB3. I'm going to come from the bottom and kind of just flick up a little bit. And then I'll use my IB2, which is the center color, to kind of blend those two together a little bit. Again, doing the flicking from the bottom up. And then coming back with my IB1 to soften those edges. And you can do your markers in whichever combination and order that you want to. One thing to note though, the more ink you put down when you're using your alcohol markers, the easier the blend is going to be, because it's going to have more to work with. Also, you can color over foiling. It's not going to damage the foil. It's not going to lift it. It's going to look perfect. If you get a little too much of the ink on top of the foil, just wipe it off. It won't do any kind of damage on there. So that I think turned out pretty. I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of these and do the same thing on here. And it's the same exact technique as that first flower. Color to all of my little flowers, and the same thing on this other band that is done in the cobalt blue. And now I'm going to start putting this together. I'm using some foam tape. This is just Scotch foam tape that I've got off of Amazon. It's a nice thin foam tape, so it doesn't add a ton of bulk, which means that when I do a double layer, it gives that dimension but doesn't give it too much, if you know what I mean. So I'm going to put the So Kind of You right here in the center of my... Might help if I put it on there straight. Put that right down in the center of my little band here. And before I press down, make sure it's still a little bit off. And I'm wondering, I might have the die cut a little bit crooked, but I think that is going to still work out pretty nicely. And then this is going to go across the front here. And again, I'm going to add some foam tape on the back to do that. Just one strip. And that's going to go vertically right across, well, horizontally right across the center. I am going to use my grid to try to make sure it is lined up straight. And luckily we have a little flower right in the middle on both sides that's going to be a great guide. Okay, so here is going to be the front of my card. And then I'll place that right on the front of the card, leaving that little tiny border all the way around. And since I'm using art glitter glue, I can slide it around just a little bit before it starts to take hold. So in addition to that, I want to have a place on the inside where you can write. Now you can can see it okay, but I think it would look nicer if it was white. So I'm taking another piece of cardstock here, and I'm going to trim that one down. So let's trim that smaller than A2. So I'm going to go down to 4 by 5 1/4. And I'm going to add some liquid glue on the back of my card. And then to make sure that it's placed exactly where I want it to be here. Okay, so I am going to place it with the glue side up on the other side and just center that so you can see where it's going to be, and it's easy to move around, and then you just close it up. And then it adheres right where you wanted it on the inside of the card. This also means that you can decorate it any which way you wanted to. You could even add some additional hot foil on the inside if you wanted before putting that down. So I think that is going to be a really cute card. That finishes up this card project today using the So Kind of You Glimmer of the Month from Spellbinders for March 2023. And I think this turned out so super lovely. You guys have a wonderful day. Be sure to check out this playlist to see more card videos where I am using Spellbinders products, and I will talk to you soon. Bye guys.